Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. My name is Jason.
And my name is Steve.
Steve is a licensed marriage and family therapist with over 30 years experience, and I'm the guy who operates the podcast equipment and speaks every so often. That's my role.
And who comes up with really great questions.
Thanks. And so how this works is I present a topic to Steve, which I planned ahead of time, but Steve has no idea about, and we talk about it for an hour or so. Today's topic is, can men and women be friends? So I'll let Steve think about that. I know he's got a lot to say about it. And before we kick off the conversation, if you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. At the end of each episode, Steve will answer a listener question, so stay tuned for that. So this is going to be a fun discussion because I've heard you mention this before, and I have a lot of women friends, so it'll be an eye-opening conversation for me.
Well, I dread it because the inner core of me is often quite cowardly, and I just know, there's going to be a lot of tongues wagging, people disagreeing with me, and I just don't really thrive on controversy and confrontation, but I do have some strong opinions about this. Yeah.
Well, I think they'll be good because I feel like now that I have friendships that are already established and they'll be there, but recently I've come to the conclusion that I don't think I'm going to be making any more women friends.
Why?
No, this is about you.
No, but seriously, why?
Because they end up getting to the point where they want to date, or it gets complicated, and then there's feelings involved, and then I've had a pattern in my life where I've met women and I wasn't necessarily into them that way, where I wanted to date them, but I did find them enjoyable and friends, and it got kind of messy. That happened a few times in my life, and it's to the point now where the last time it happened, it was really like difficult and painful, and I felt bad, and I felt like I was being as upfront as possible, just like with all my stuff. But then the other person has feelings, and then if it's not reciprocated, it puts you in this kind of weird sort of state with the friendship. Like, how do you move forward? And it's kind of a lot to deal with.
Yeah, because if she likes you, you have an obligation to love her.
Well, yeah, yeah. But then you have to say no if you don't feel, that way.
You should at least fake it. I mean,
you should. Okay.
Just to let her down easy.
So that's kind of where I'm seeing it. And I've had other, it's just like something that seems to be kind of complicated. It seems to like I have some that will never go away, but then the ones I'm making now, and also it's like I'm currently single, and I'm also, if I do meet a woman, then I want to form a relationship with her. I feel like most of my energy and time is going to be within that relationship, and then in my work, and then and it's just like, and I also wonder, it's like, do I hold women back then who like me, but I'm not reciprocating? Do I hold them back from going out and meeting people because they're hung up with me? And like, so those are the kind of feelings I'm having about it.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're talking about this, even if I'm a little scared, because I think it's such a very important part of managing love intelligently, to know where love is possible, but also to know where love really isn't possible. So, being able to discern that, I think, is incredibly important. So, okay, my pitch, and I've heard, by the way, I just want to say I've heard hundreds, if not thousands, of clients over the years say the same thing as you.
Oh, really?
In regard to your experience. And I think it's very telling. So,
and what are they saying really quick? They're saying the same sort of story, and are they thinking about, they're like, I'm not going to make women friends anymore. And then when you ask them why, then they say,
well, they haven't arrived at that critical conclusion you've arrived at already, where I'm not going to make women friends anymore. It's only upon meeting me that they actually reflect upon that and realize, oh, yeah, those don't really work out for me. They're still at that stage.
Okay.
So, what I tell my clients, first of all, I don't believe that men and women can be friends. And I hasten to add that I have many women in my life who I love and cherish, and for whom I would do any number of loving tasks and caring activities and that sort of thing. But I really think the essence of friendship is a platonic affection. And in this context, platonic means free of the animal passions. I get into a lot of arguments with generally younger men who say, oh, well, yeah, but we haven't had sex.
Yeah.
Or she and I aren't having sex. Or, and I say, you mean like yet? And I said, well, no, I just don't have those feelings for, okay, but what if she did? Or what if you developed those feelings? Would it still be a friendship? And they get a little bit confused. But what they usually mean when they say she's just a friend is that we have not had sex yet. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have sex at some point. But I would say at that point, long before you actually have sex, it is very clear you have more than platonic affections for this person. And when I say more, I don't mean qualitatively more, I mean quantitatively more, because I consider friendship between two women or between two men to be something that's sacred. We're often taught in our culture that marriage is sacred, and we call it holy matrimony for that reason. But I think all of our lives are full of sacred, set apart relationships, including, let's start at maybe the bottom, our relationships with our beloved animal friends, our pets. I think that there's a sacred responsibility when we take an animal into our lives that we're going to care for them in the right way. We're going to treat them with dignity. We're going to be sensitive to their needs and that sort of thing. And then, as I've said before, friendship to me is a sacred relationship. And I think people who are often having friendships with people of the opposite sex, they don't really understand just what is so fantastic about same-sex relationships. And just, I know some of my gay listeners are going to be wondering, yeah, but what if I'm gay? And let me just address that at the onset here. I think whether people are gay or straight, men have a better intuitive understanding of men, and also a greater natural acceptance of male behaviors and thoughts and feelings. And I think women are more understanding and more considerate of women's feelings. I think it's so much easier because we're in the same sort of body, and we get that. So in my friendship circle, I have gay and straight friends. I have Black and white friends. I have older and younger friends. But what we all have in common is a deep love for one another, and truly an amazing support for one another, in that we can challenge one another. It feels very safe to do so. We bring humor to the table and nobody feels threatened by the humor. We're laughing at each other, laughing at each other's ideas, and we get smarter as a result of our associating. I think we are making each other better men as a result for merely having known one another. So I'm a big fan of friendship. I just don't think that friendship, well, let me put this in the first person. I don't think I can be friends with women because I like women the way heterosexual men like women. I appreciate them. I think they're beautiful. I think they're amazing creatures. I love listening to them. I like watching them, and I especially like touching them all over. So, so when we talk about, it's not for a lack of appreciation, but I think for women.
But you don't think you could not touch a woman if you're just.
Oh, absolutely. And because I have many women in my life, but it takes a certain, I think I have an awareness there that even if she was an associate of mine for many years, there might come a day where I find her more more than just that.
Mm.
And long before we get there, even from the first, when a person walks into a room, science has already done the studies on this. The first thing we notice about somebody walking in a room is not their height or their weight or their race, skin tone, or anything else but gender.
Mm.
Men walking into a room may represent a potential threat. Women walking into a room may represent a potential opportunity, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Depending on who we are. So we notice gender right off the bat. And that's something that's, we don't have universal human behaviors for nothing. That means it's in our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it matters that we notice them because of what I just said about opportunity versus threat. And for me, it is impossible to be entirely platonic about any woman. Even women I find unattractive physically, they're still women. And so if a handsome young man like yourself were to be standing next to a woman who was not as attractive on some objective scale, I would undeniably find her far more attractive. And so there's already a certain level of sexual energy directed toward her simply because of her gender.
Mm.
And I in my brain, I'm happily married, and I've turned the flirt switch to the off direction. And so I'm not flirting with women, not that I haven't in the past, but I mean, nowadays, and it makes my life so much easier.
Mm.
And I talk to other men who are of the same mind, and they just don't even put themselves in situations where anything could happen because they too are happily married or involved with someone, and they can sense that there's some sexual energy coming to them from this other person, and they really don't want to go down that road, so they'll turn left when she's turning right, or they'll do something else to make sure that they're not in a room alone.
Yeah.
And that's not because of some primitive religious fundamentalism or something like that. It's really just not wanting to give any allowance to having drama in our lives. Because, the one of the things I love the most about human sexuality is it's a little bit like what people say about God. It's omniscient and it's omnipresent. It's the most portable part of ourselves. It goes with us into every meeting, every relationship, every discussion. We always are sexual beings. We may end up behaving moronically, so we're not maybe intellectual so much, but certainly we are sexual beings. And I have clients who disagree with me, sometimes very strongly. Sometimes they want to argue at length, like in a group. And I usually take them through a thought experiment.
Yeah.
And the thought experiment, I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but I asked them to imagine that, because they've entered some sort of contest and won, they have an all expenses paid trip for two to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And it includes hotels and all kinds of, meals and everything else. And problem is that none of all their friends who they might want to take, the only one who's available happens to be the woman friend. He's telling me is just a friend. and I say, and so would you take her? He's absolutely. Okay, so you've taken her, and then part of the tour, part of the contest, you've won a 3-hour tour of the islands in a little boat. Yeah. And it's just a 3-hour tour, and unbelievably at that same moment a squall springs up out on the ocean, and you're violently driven off course, and you lose all sense of where you are. The captain doesn't even know what's going on, and your ship wrecks, and it's just you and the captain and a few other passengers who are on this island, and everybody else is partnered up, and you're there with your friend. The question in this thought experiment is,
I think I know the question.
how many days, how long is it before when she says, it's been so long since I've been with a man. Would it be okay if we just slept together one time?
Mm.
How long would it take you to say yes to that?
Mm.
And most of my clients say, okay, I'm done. I'm out. And I give up. You're right. Because if as a heterosexual, if my buddy was coming, my buddy Vince, let's say, I'm not going to be cuddling with Vince in his sleeping bag.
Yeah.
But if it were Susan and my good buddy Susan, I probably would. And my clients usually say the same thing. They don't even say days. They say an hour or two.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take that long. So that to me proves that there's more than just a platonic relationship, even when people are claiming a platonic relationship. And the other fallacy I hear all the time, especially again from my younger clients, is, when I explain what platonic means and free of the animal passions and all that. And they say, oh, well, yeah, but we've already had sex plenty of times. We got that out of our system.
Yeah.
Really? Really? It's out of your system. So someday, do you suppose you ever might marry a special someone? Well, yeah, I suppose. And so when you find out that your wife isn't really into fishing, but your old buddy Susan, I always pick Susan, your old buddy Susan loves to fish, and you're going to go on a fishing trip. Would you take Susan? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a 3-day trip. It's a long weekend, and you'll be staying out overnight, and you have a tent, for two. But I'm sure nothing would happen, right? And he says, well, yeah, I don't see anything happening. And your wife's going to be perfectly comfortable with that, you and Susan going out and spending the weekend together. Well, I don't know about that. I guarantee you, no, she's really not going to be 100% comfortable with that. So there are limits to friendship. Even if I don't see the sexual limits, other people around me do. Like, what's he doing taking Susan out for a 3-day weekend? What the hell? What's happening? So, I just think of sexuality. I mean, it's the force that has enabled our species to reproduce for so many tens of thousands of years, if not millions, depending on how far back we want to take our lineage. And it seems like such a powerful force of nature. I think we dismiss it cavalierly at our own risk.
So would you say people are trying to control it then? Or
I think they're trying to not acknowledge it. I don't think they're trying to control it so much. I just think, it's like, no, I'm evolved, man. I'm way beyond that. I'm not some horn dog teenager. It's not like I'm going to be copping the feel on my best buddy, Susan, even if I've already done that 100 times in the past. I'm certainly not going to do that in the future unless I land on that island and unless I'm tempted or until we do. And then, and even that song, I can't even remember who does that great song. He's Just a Friend, but it's a ballad song, and it's quite funny, where the husband is asked to step outside and just wait because they're waxing the floor, and it's taking days for this floor to get waxed. And his wife keeps reminding him that her buddy is just a friend. I think it'd be in the country category.
Yeah. It sounds like a country song. So I guess I'm thinking now, I'm like, so then if you have all these friends with women, are you like holding on to something? Are you trying to, I don't know. It's like,
why would people do that?
Hold on to something?
No, why would people have friends of the opposite sex?
I mean, I'm thinking like, so say, I mean, if you're single, I don't know, it's complicated because then it's like, well, are you supposed to then just have, because if you, like, for instance, my one friend I met in grad school, I was coming out of a relationship, was not interested in dating, any of that sort of stuff, and met her, became friends. She was leaving that year. She was a third year student, and she left. And then before she left, she wrote a letter, said she was always crazy about me.
Ooh.
And then I had to then,
heartbreaker.
yeah. And and then I had to then tell her, I didn't have those feelings. And then she took a few days to think about it, and then came back and like said, okay. And then we just continued to be friends throughout the years. I mean, she lives in a different state and all
which
that
helps.
But it's also like, is that, I don't know. But then it's like, if you eventually, and again, I'm single right now, but it's like, if I do get in a relationship, it's like those friendships kind of like fall away, or they're not as prevalent as they are
right
now. So it's,
yeah, they do. They tend to fall away when you finally do get a partner, because now she has no reason to hold on to hope that somehow scraps are going to fall off the table. And
well, that's what I wonder. Like, do they hold on to hope like that? Is that something that you're doing? Like, are people even conscious that, hey, we're still friends, we think everything's good, but are we both holding out hope that maybe this
someday,
person, one person will break, or one person will change their mind, and then that doesn't feel good, because then you're holding someone back and yourself back, possibly.
but I don't think the responsibility for their choice is on you.
Yeah.
So, if it's still working for you, by all means, go forward with that. I can see for me, it's so much of this is mental, because there are many women whose company and whose thoughts I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I would love to have more time with them, that sort of thing. But I don't, in my mind, list them in my friend group. In my friend group, I only have guys. And so why would men and women want to cross that gender divide and have friends other than just, the fact that they like each other? I think there are some very ugly reasons why people do that. And one is, for certain women out there, the way that they've learned to make connections that are significant is through an undercurrent of sexual appeal. Mm-hmm. And so all of their friends are men. And I've met many women like that in my career who, all my best friends are men. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. I just don't understand it. Well, it's because heterosexual women have no interest in what the vibe you're laying down, if that's what you're doing. And vice versa, it's for the men who have like a plethora of women friends. Mm-hmm. I think what it means is they haven't found their place amongst the men yet. And but
I also have a lot of men friends too.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm like a strange.
Well, you're not a client of mine, so I don't want to, put you on the spot, but I mean, we've talked about some of your male friends, and it hasn't been exactly.
Well, that was,
So I don't know what your friend group looks like. But I'm just saying, what I found in my office is this happens a lot. Okay. So I didn't mean anything personal there.
No, it was a good laugh. Well, I'm not talking about the good friends. I got good other friends, Steve.
Okay. But and then but you're quite right in saying what you said there, because in protesting with me, because I think, again, it's not all or nothing with most of us. It's on a continuum. Mm-hmm. So we might have some amazing male friends, and then the sense that we have some female friends as well. And maybe we haven't gotten to the bottom of the sorting hat from Harry Potter hasn't quite clarified who's who and what's what. Yeah. But then as time goes by, like if you did, let's say you had 5 male friends and 3 female friends right now, and you get a significant other, not just a dating partner, but a significant other in your life. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that the female friendships survive that. Yeah. I mean, they may be friendly, long distance acquaintances or friends, but it's not like.
Do they become acquaintances then? Is that what I start calling them?
Well, honestly, for me, it doesn't even matter. You could even say just women I really love and care about, because I don't know that we have great labels, for so much of this, but they might be women you actually care about very deeply and you really wish the best. You just literally do not have those kinds of feelings for. Mm-hmm. But I think, for me, the notion of friendship and what friendship potentially offers is so wonderful and so truly sacred, set apart from other relationships, that I would want to sow to that experience. I would want to have that experience. And male friendships really exist on a different plane for men than friendships with women.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell people, and I get plenty of pushback. And, it's almost always from my younger clients. Virtually none of my older clients. I mean, and when I say younger and older, I mean, the divide is right around 30, 35. And it's been the same over the years. The same guy who was arguing with me when he was 25, if I see him when he's 35, now he's given up on all that, because he's seen it turn into a disaster over and over again.
With the friendships with women?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what sort of disasters is he just?
Oh, kind of like what you said, where somebody cares about the other person in that way, or it gets, to where it's a weird stalking relationship, or there's just something ugly that happens, the guy typically, right, would be the one who gets tempted by having a booty call, and he goes ahead and has sex, and then she's got her hopes up that, oh, this means we're on, and then now it's happening finally at long last. Prince Charming is coming. And then she finds out he's a frog, and that it's never going to work out, and he just was looking for some sex, and that's understandable. It's very human, but how many of us really want to put people we care about through that? Or much less, I shouldn't have said it that way. I don't want to put anybody through that, but I don't want to take responsibility for her choices. So what I really don't want to do is put myself through that. I don't want to deal with the drama, the hurt, the recriminations. Well, you shouldn't have done that, didn't you? Okay. You're right. So the sex wasn't that good anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of where I've been feeling it all, and it's just something that I've definitely looking at. And I mean, my one male friendship that I've had that was the most consistent, that was the one that kind of was the betrayal. Him and his girlfriend chose my ex-girlfriend to be friends with over me, and I still have other friendships as well, but I mean, as far as like out in town, I made one good friend, but then he moved away out to Winnemucca recently, so he left, and then I started becoming friends with another guy, and then he went off and went through a breakup, and now he's out in Mexico, like finding himself.
I think part of this is our human tendency as hunter-gatherers. We crave companionship, right?
Yeah.
And so we really do value the person of the opposite gender who comes into our life, who's kind or thoughtful or intelligent and has so many qualities we value in human beings in general. And then you add to that the hurt or the disappointment of friends betraying us, friends disappearing, friends ghosting us. And the challenge, I would say, though, isn't between men and women. It's really about me and my ability to make good decisions in picking out friends. I've often compared these relationships and said that, friendship is like the undergraduate school for relationships. And I think, do you remember, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but it did to me, where when I was a young boy, my friends were the boys in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we would play with toys and play all these games. And some of the friends turned out to be mean. Some turned out to be thieves. Some turned out to be just people I didn't really like. And what you learn, I mean, you could take away the lesson that, well, boys are just not good friends.
Yeah.
But that would be rather irrational. I think it would be more like, I'm not very good at picking out friends. So that's a skill too, just like picking out women you'd like to share your life with.
Yeah.
Picking out friends you want to share your life with is also a skill. And most of us don't approach that as seriously, I think, as we should. And it should be taken pretty much like dating women, where we initiate contact, we get to know them, we spend more time with them, we develop a healthy relationship or not, and then do a critical incident debriefing again, where we kind of take a look at where did we go wrong? What the heck happened there? Because even as an adult, I was pursuing friendship with men who weren't available.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself pursuing friendship with men who I found out had a secret life that was really very dishonest. And I like look at myself, what is going on with me? Or I remember picking friends who were really just not ethical human beings. And
so what was that saying about you, Stephen A?
Yeah, right. Well, it was saying, I think that I was very incompetent at picking out friends. And also I would add the word needy to that to the point of desperation, where I just really wanted friends, but I just wasn't doing a very good job. And I think in hindsight, I would say I had no practice because I'd gotten married at a young age, and my wife became my life, and my family became my life, and then my jobs became my life. And so I was consumed with all these other things. And the men who were in my lives were sort of the happenstance relationships that occur simply because you go to the same church.
Yeah.
And then, well, if you stop going to that church, that's the end of that relationship. Or when you get a divorce, your friends who were the spouses of her girlfriends, they cut ties with you because they don't want to have any conflicts with their own wives, quite understandably, right?
Yeah.
So then for me as a man, I mean, I really think, for my poor clients, every mistake a client of mine has ever made, I have multiple analogs of that same mistake in my own history. And so there's not a mistake that you or anybody else, I think, could think of when in your own life, when it comes to friendship, that I haven't made more than once, because I think I've been I haven't been exactly very smart about this. And it's only been experience and my long life that has slapped me down over and over again, where I start really being more careful and more intentional about building a circle of friends.
Yeah.
And so my circle of friends now is great. They're guys with an amazing sense of humor. They all have a great sense of humor. They all can laugh at themselves and laugh at sacred cows. They don't have really much in the way of sacred cows. They're all entrepreneurial. They're all friendly. They're all kind. And I think I count myself as very rich in friendship.
And how many friends do you have?
Right. Yeah. Right now I have 5.
5.
Yeah.
And how often do you interact with them?
Every week.
Once a week?
Well, at least once a week, because we go out and we have breakfast together and spend hours talking.
How long is that go for?
2 hours, at least 2 hours.
All right.
2.5 hours. Sometimes.
And then you talk to them outside of that?
Yeah. Sometimes we go to a movie, or not all of us go, but one-on-one, we'll go to a movie or do something else together. One of them brought his wife along with my new wife on our honeymoon. We did a cruise together. They had their own cabin.
All right.
Didn't get any funny ideas. And I had kids, so my kids came along too. So it was quite the cruise, quite the honeymoon. But it was, I just, and I've traveled with friends, across the country, including, out of the country too. So,
all right.
My friends mean an awful lot to me. And unfortunately, with all of us have a time limitations. I don't have time to include some of the great men I've met over the years who are amazing people, because I can't service all those relationships. I think friendship takes a certain amount of attention, like having a girlfriend or anything other relationship, like having a dog. You have to spend some time on that relationship to let it develop and to really express the thoughts and feelings that you have for that relationship. And I think there are limits to how many people. So the whole Facebook idea of having 100 friends, I think that's
100,000.
Yeah, I think that's BS. It's absolute nonsense. And I think for those people who really buy into that idea, I think what it means is they don't know what friendship is. They don't know what intimacy is.
Yeah.
It's like my clients who've told me, I've had clients who've had thousands of sexual partners.
Thousands?
Thousands. Yeah. Okay. So you can relax. You're not the bad one.
Yeah.
But after thousands of sexual partners, do they have have they had any with whom they've had intimacy? Well, no.
Yeah.
And what do they think?
And what did they think about that?
Well, depending on the individual, most of them think it's fine because it's just it's all about sex. That's why they're in my office.
Yeah. But are some people just fine with that? They're just like, that's just what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for intimacy. I'm just looking for sex.
Well, yeah, and that's what they would say.
But they don't.
But does it? If I don't get my needs met for meaningful human connection, does that affect me even if I don't know that I have that need? Well, I would argue, yes, it does. So it's sort of like the man who doesn't have any friends because he's so preoccupied with work, or so preoccupied with work, church, maybe even family, that he really doesn't have any friends. Really, even his brothers, quotes around that word, at church aren't really his friends. And so does that affect him? I would say, yeah, it affects him in his marriage. It affects him in his parenting. It affects him throughout his life and certainly in his mental health. So I think friendship is sacred. I've said that like 3 times now, but I also think it's the linchpin of kind of a baseline of mental health.
Yeah.
So many men that we both have known, I think, over the years, go off the deep end when their wife dumps them and they she trades up and runs off to Acapulco with the swimming instructor or whatever, and he goes into this depression and despair. But I think when you have friendship, it makes a huge difference in terms of your mental health.
Yeah, for sure. So you have no women that you talk to other than your wife?
No, I mean, I'm friendly, and I like I said, I love women, and I talk to women all the time. And
you don't have any acquaintance that you talk to like on the phone to like catch up with stuff or anything like that? Or,
well, I'm really close to the women in my wife's life.
Okay.
For the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, like her female relatives,
all right,
who visit our home quite often, or her female friends over the years I've known her. I have zero problems with any of them. I enjoy all of them, and
but you're not hopping on the phone and having like an hour to 3 hour conversation with them, or
well, I do text and email with some of them with whom I share intellectual interests. So
it's busted.
Shout out to Aunt Bonnie in New York, who she and I have a similar interest in the same kind of literature.
Okay.
And
so you're emailing.
Yeah, I email her. And
how long are these emails?
Because the length of the email is
really
size matters. Is that really what we're saying here?
Well, I want to see how intimate you're getting with. It's just hey, check this book out, Steve, or just.
We'll talk
you
about
getting
it.
into like deep like conversations, like picking things apart and analyzing things. And
I think I told you about the publisher who told me that, Steve, weighty ideas are not actually necessarily weighty. So you don't have to have a big email to have a intimate email. And it could be intellectually intimate, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, and even emotionally intimate, but that doesn't mean it's romantic.
Yeah.
So, and it's really, I have female relatives in my family, and over the years I've been quite close to them. Sadly, almost all of them are deceased. And then, some of the great women in my life just share a fascination with aspects of their career that overlap with my career, like the world of publishing and writing. There's just so many great women writers out there, and I would be like tickled to death to spend the afternoon having tea with one or all of them.
So what if you had met one and then you became friends with her?
but I don't. See, I mean, because it might have made more sense if you had said to me, well, "What if you develop feelings?" Oh, I do all the time. I get crushes on wonderful, amazing women all the time.
Yeah,
it's just that I'm such an open book with my wife. I just let her know.
Yeah.
Oh, she's the most amazing, honey. You never have to worry. If you die, I will never be alone. And my wife laughs, and because she knows how I think about these things, it's not like, if I did have a bit of a crush or I was really feeling it, like, with even some of the amazing actresses in Hollywood who are just so thoughtful and insightful in what they have to say. And some of them are absolutely physically gorgeous, and I wouldn't have any trouble at all being attracted to them. But I would never think of them as like buddies, friends.
Yeah. But what if say one of them was like, yeah, let's continue this conversation. Let's catch up like every once a month and have
I would do that. God, I would do that.
So that's fine. But yeah, if you wanted to classify it as a friendship, it would just be more, what would you say it was then?
Well, if I had a chance, what's her name from Barbie? Either the director or the star.
All right.
Of those two.
Greta Gerwig or something.
Yeah, and Greta and oh gosh, I'm never thinking of these things. But anyway, yeah, if I had a chance to talk professionally with any of these amazing women, I would once a month. Are you kidding? I would love to do that. But I wouldn't call that friendship.
What would you call it?
It is whatever it is. I wouldn't call it friendship, because my friends have access. When a man becomes a friend of mine, it's really more like a band of brothers. So they could call me at 3 a.m. and tell me they need to be bailed out of jail, and I'm assuming Greta will not need that service. And the same with maybe opening up and telling me about something he's really struggling with. I don't know that Greta and I would ever have that relationship.
Let's say you're having this, it's month 6, and then all of a sudden something personal slips in.
I could see that.
And then
two people who know each other.
Would you be like, whoa, we gotta keep it business?
No, not at all. Because I think you can really care. I mean, I care deeply about my clients, but they're not friends.
Yeah.
And they've opened up, and occasionally I'll make a disclosure about my own past. And I think they know me pretty well, and I certainly know them very well, but we're not friends. So we can have emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, even to a degree. Like I do a lot of men's groups, and I would say and with men, I can have a lot of sexual intimacy, and that we can discuss sexuality very comfortably, but that doesn't mean they're my friends. They're my clients. So we can have all kinds of intimacy, but you still don't get to the friendship status.
Okay. So the friendship status includes the get out of jail card.
Oh, absolutely. And access really to thousands of dollars, because if my friends were in need, like if a friend had a hospital problem, a health problem that was significant, or needed somebody to bring him soup, I would be there. I'd be all over that.
Yeah.
So sure. And it's just that, there's, I don't find myself, I don't know if maybe it's not clear in our conversation what I'm talking about, because I think it's sort of rare for someone to have closeness with people who aren't friends, and friends who are not known to the other person. So you can imagine new people coming into my life and myself really enjoying them. Like, I can imagine some amazing male mentors coming into my life, some older men. Those are rare. But I would have no problem having men in my life who are mentors, but they're not friends.
Yeah.
And I might open up to them about all kinds of things, but we're still not friends. And I've had therapy, and my therapists were not my friends, even though they knew lots of intimate things about my life.
And what about when you were single during that time between, like, after your divorce? Did you have any of those relationships turn into friendships at all, or was it always like, if we're not dating, we're done? Well,
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. So maybe I could say
So say you're dating like a woman and you decide that you both mutually decide to end it, but you really enjoyed something about each other or wanted to continue.
Well, I think I'm the one pulling the short straw on that scenario, because the women I've dated with whom it didn't work out, they never ever wanted to have more of a relationship with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I leave that bad a taste, I think, in women's mouths, that they just don't want to have a thing to do with me. But I think it is the case that there are a number of them that I'm very fond of, and I really wish well, and I hope for the best for them. And so I have love for them in my heart, but I don't have, ours is not a friendship.
Hmm. And there wasn't a time during that time where a woman did she ever say, I don't want to be with you that way, but I'd like to be friends? Did that ever happen?
Well, I suppose, but probably not in those words, and nobody's actually said that to me, but I know so many clients who've reported the same, that I feel like I almost feel like I've heard that from someone. And I think, I think they call it being put in the friend zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, for me, it's not particularly interesting.
That zone.
Yeah, I'm not.
Because you can't touch.
Well, no, because I have friends.
Oh, yeah.
My friend compartment is pretty full.
Yeah.
And it's, and how awkward and uncomfortable would that be for my breakfast club to get together, and then I bring in the new breakfast club member and she's a woman. I think that would be like really disruptive.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think it would. So, yeah, I mean, I have all kinds of love and feelings for lots of women, and at lots of different levels. And like every other guy, come on, you guys, back me up on this. I certainly am sexually attracted to lots of women. There's so many amazing, wonderful women. And what is the saying? So many women, so little time. I mean, we can't be in relationships with everybody.
Yeah. Even
friendship relationships.
So you think, as far as like managing your love intelligently and finding the right person, would you say that having relation or friendships of the opposite sex can kind of impede on that or interfere with that? Is that a fair statement?
I know you're working at something here. I'm not quite sure what it is. So I'll just say,
I'm just trying to go through everything in my mind too. For myself.
So I just don't think it works. So, yeah. And I think the fishing story kind of says the whole thing. It's not like I'm going to tell my wife, oh, Susan and I are going fishing this weekend. Yeah. I mean, how does that ever work? And especially if Susan is obviously an attractive woman who's been interested in me at that level, that doesn't work. I mean, that's a precursor to having an affair, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think I wanted to go down that road.
Maybe it's more of like a polyamorous thing, like we talked about.
Maybe. And I know that
maybe there's ethical, or maybe it's monogamous, but then they have friends that are of the opposite sex. It's a new category that will be.
It's a polyamory precursor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's polyamory light, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps.
Or it's like we have friends that are of the opposite sex, but we're not having sex with them.
Yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
That's the thing.
Yeah. So
that you get that trip to Hawaii.
I know, the thing that I don't have, I know Mike Pence, our former vice president, he has this policy of never being left alone in a room with a woman.
Yeah.
And he says some similar things about that, similar to my own words. But I don't feel like my approach is at all like his. I do feel like I could have really wonderful, close, intellectually intimate, emotionally intimate relationships with women, and that I could. And I've had any number of female clients over the years who would sit in my office and we were alone. So I'm not really afraid of all that. It's what I'm talking about is something more spiritual, and just in terms of friendship and friendship being a value of mine. that I cherish. I think that with Mike Pence, it's more spiritual in the sense of religious, and it's more about avoiding adultery.
Yeah.
Or even the accusation of adultery. Mm-hmm. And that has not really been my concern.
Yeah. And you said, just to come back to the beginning, I think it sounds like for you, friendship, when we talk about it, it's about getting clear on the definition and then maybe getting some ideals or some ideas of what that definition entails for maybe you, because you have a specific thing, like your friends get this, this, and that, but you called it a a platonic. How did you define that again?
Friendship is a platonic affection, free of the animal passions.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, let's say, a warm, loving, and beautiful woman I'm attracted to, who's either a friend of my wife or one of her family members, or I could easily have feelings for that person. Say, let's go back to Greta. I could easily have feelings for that person because I fall in love easily. That's been a common enough part of my life, my entire life, from the first days of elementary school on. I don't think that is a weakness, though. I think it just means for those of us who kind of shift our body posture and shuffle around quietly because we're covertly people who fall in love easily. I think it means that we have the ability to see what is truly lovable about a wide variety of people. So there are many men I would love to be friends with, simply don't have time.
Yeah.
And there are many women I could easily fall in love with, but that isn't friendship. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there you are.
All right. Well, yeah, I had some thinking to do. All right. So to wrap things up, we have a listener question. And if you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. So this week's question is short, sweet, and it's one sentence. And here it is. What do you think is the secret ingredient to successful couples counseling?
Whoa.
No friends. I answer for you. No friends of the opposite sex. Goodbye. Thank you.
Well,
I did your job.
Mic drop, right? So could you repeat that question?
What do you think is the secret ingredient to successful couples counseling?
There isn't one. There are many ingredients, and hopefully none of them are secret, right? I mean, I'd like to think that they'd all be widely known. People walk in and the usual suspects are, we all need to be honest and we need to put it out there. But I think for me as a therapist, I just have an understanding that my clients are always going to, especially new clients who don't even know me, of course they're not going to be entirely honest. Of course they're going to lie. They've deceived themselves. That's why they're in my office. If they hadn't already done that. So what's the secret? I think I guess I haven't really thought about this, but the more I think about it, I think it's based on the skill of the therapist to establish a truly intimate atmosphere. And by intimate, a safe place to safely share who we are with one another. And then the therapist's skill level needs to include interventions that empower the clients to really solve their problems in a way that's efficient. And, I want to say solve their problems, but when two people with a troubled relationship walk into my office, I do a disclaimer and share with them that I can only see two clients in the room right now. Mm-hmm. Your marriage is not a client. So I'm here to help you each because you are the human beings. Your marriage is a construct that describes your relationship. And if you can solve the problems with my help that keep you from being as close as you would like to be, I'm delighted to be a part of that. But if you discover that, wow, this is just really a relationship you don't want, then I think the therapist has an obligation to be honest with his clients and ask those hard questions. Is this relationship a sustainable one? Could you see yourself going forward in this relationship and, with the reality that you've already described to me that could include something It's just awful. Like, well, he's a good man or she's a wonderful woman, but I just never feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the way it's going to be, I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the therapist's job to promote avoiding a divorce, even in the face of abject misery.
Mm.
So that was a messy answer, but that's my answer for now.
No, that's good. I think, like you said, safe space is important. It makes me think of a lot of things, like even for improv, like teaching improv comedy. My job is to create a safe space for people to be as uninhibited, as silly, as goofy as they are, take off all the filters of everything that they're carrying in society and give them the space to do that on stage.
Yeah. And there's, again, I notice a lot of similarity between the two activities. And for me, it's also similar to going to an Aikido dojo in that you want a safe place to free your mind to learn whatever the skills are that you need to learn. And in marriage counseling, I think it's about solving problems. And some couples have made big mistakes and married the wrong person, and they're just never able to get there to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And that's accepting that, I think, is that is a possibility, that's very energizing, that, people then don't need to take it lightly. They can take it seriously and hopefully lovingly.
Great. That's a good way to end on love, something positive during this. So thank you all for the question, and thanks for listening. And thanks as always, Steve.
You're welcome.